Hi everyone, and welcome again to another art video. Today we are going to be using watercolor and using really bright, fun colors to create a bookmark. See how the top is flat here and the top is round. So either one will do, the bigger the better. I'm using watercolors. These are my watercolor palette and a small water cup and paper towels just to kind of rinse off your brush. If you don't have watercolor, that is not a problem. You can do this with any medium. You can do it with marker, crayon, pastels, truly anything. So we're just going to talk about how these colors can blend together. What's really nice about watercolor is I can layer different materials on top after it dries. So I'll show you what kind of fun things we can do after we create the first layer. So I'm going to dip my brush into the water and activate one of my colors that I'd like to use. I'm going to start with this very light green. See how you can see the color and the pigment getting activated and beginning to start. You can also tell because my brush is green. So I'm going to take my brush and apply it kind of in an up and down shape. There's no wrong way to do this. I just want you to have fun and kind of explore the material. So I'm just going up and down. I'm going to take a little tiny bit more green, maybe add it towards the bottom of the page. I'm going to just take chunks, different sections of green. As you can tell here, I've got some green down here and a little bit at the top. So I'm going to follow a similar pattern. When I have less pigment and more water, see it's kind of a lighter color. When I have more pigment, it's a darker, brighter color. So that's a fun thing to kind of explore as you're going along. I might even add a few marks down here. Okay. Next, I'm going to pick up a pink. So again, dipping my brush into water and then my pink. If you have some green left over on your brush, you can go ahead, take a paper towel, gently wipe the bristles off of any color, kind of swirl it around in the water and wipe it one more time. That's going to ensure you have a clean brush. So I'm going to start with the pink. And it doesn't matter where I apply it, but I do want to try to keep it in one of the white areas. So not necessarily on top of the green. It's okay if some of it gets on top. But I want this pure, bright pink color to show and stand out. So I really want to take up this white space and introduce this bright, fun color. It's okay if one part is darker than the other. I think that's the beauty of watercolor. So the more water that you add, the lighter it'll be. Sometimes I just take some water, a tiny, tiny bit, and bring it back and introduce it to my paper. So I don't always need to get more color. Notice how the water is not absorbing too much into my paper. That's because I'm using a watercolor paper. So if you have watercolor paper, I recommend using it. If you have cardstock, that also will work. And if you don't, definitely can use regular computer paper, but just be aware that the more water you use, the more I would wait and let that dry and then add the next layer. So this type of watercolor paper has been made to be able to hold a large amount of water, whereas our computer paper isn't used to getting wet. But again, this is just about having fun. We're in a quarantine, we are using the materials that we have at home. So be creative, maybe find cardboard or the back of a cereal box. I'm sure that some watercolor would look really nice on one of those. So again, I'm taking all my lines in an up and down vertical direction, but this is the artist's choice. So as you're creating yours, maybe you want to go side to side. This is just one way. See how this is kind of stringy down here. If I don't want that to be stringy and I want it to be a little more blended, I'm going to take a tiny bit of water and gently smooth over the color, blending out. To be very gentle and light, there's no rush in creating this. And try to blend these colors. Sometimes colors might not look so great together, or they're just going to be a color you might not desire. So right here, I know that this pink and green are going to make brown. So the more that I mix the two, the browner it's going to. So now once your watercolor is dried, probably I would wait 30 minutes and it should definitely be dried by then. What we're going to be doing is adding extra layers with different materials. So I'm going to be using something called a chalk pastel. So even if you have sidewalk chalk, you can just going to apply this blue. Again, I want to take up the white space and not necessarily mix on top of the colors. I happen to know that blue and pink on my watercolors, this blue and this pink look nice together. Depending on your watercolor set or whatever materials you're using, it might look a little different. Your pink and blue might blend differently, and that's okay. It's kind of the beauty of all the different art supplies that we have. So it might be different if I'm using a flat brush. I might actually not get those stringy lines, and that can be nice too. This kind of art is called abstract because I'm not making something like I've seen before. I'm not making a realistic object. Many of you know that I paint dog portraits. This is clearly not a dog head. These are colors interacting with one another. So it's a little bit more playful and less serious, but it's also considered art and just as important. So abstract also means have fun with it. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're supposed to try things and make mistakes. That's actually a part of the process, I believe. So I like when this blue and this green mix together because I get a really nice middle green. So if you see a color you really enjoy mixing with one another, embrace that. Add more of that. Bring more of that into the painting. I like this blue mixing into the pink, and it's creating purple. So maybe before you start this project, you might want to test out your watercolor set and see what two colors look nice together. That's an important part about being an artist, is knowing your materials and doing the work beforehand as well, doing the preparation work. So you can see they're not the exact same. But I'm just using one as a guide to inspire the other. So yours most certainly isn't going to look just like this, and I don't want it to. I want yours to look like your unique creation. You like pastels because they're blendable. So I could take my finger or a paper towel and rub into the paper a little bit. You could use oil pastel if you have that, or crayons. It's gonna create a fun dimension to your artwork. Instead of just seeing watercolor, you see different types of media interacting. Media is a word we use for what kind of material you're using. So I think I used a little too much blue, and that's okay. It's good that I noticed. And now I have the power to make that decision and change it. So I could add some lighter green. I'm definitely gonna add my pink. So as you go, you're making decisions. It's really important. Kind of evaluating what you really like about the piece and thinking about what you might want to change. But for this project, I really just want you to focus also on having fun and letting the colors do the work for you rather than overthinking. Because this project is just the beginning, and it's going to be a relaxing one, not something that's going to stress us out or make us worry. So I don't have to blend it either. Another thing I like to do is maybe look at a pattern when I'm creating. So if there's a pattern you like, maybe it's polka dots, or maybe it's stripes, and you're able to have that picture next to you, it's good to look at for a reference. It doesn't mean you're copying. It means you're looking at aspects that you like and being inspired. Now my pink. A little bit brighter than I wanted, but maybe by just putting hints of this pink in between some of the darker colors, and then I'll layer some light pink on top. Kind of a medium pink. You don't have to go crazy with this either. You don't have to do the whole thing. Probably should have done a little less, but it's too late now. Okay, now for my next layer. This is actually my third layer. I added some acrylic paints on a paper plate, and I added too much. You really don't need that amount. A really small amount goes a long way. So I've got a brush, my acrylic paints, a little water cup, and my paper towels. So I'm going to add this paint on top of my watercolor and pastel. So I'm taking the paint and kind of introducing my brush, my paintbrush, and my water cup. And I've got my acrylic paint on a paper plate. And I'm using my paper plate to mix two colors. So I just mixed the white and the pink together. This type of paint is a bit different than the watercolor. It's a tiny bit thicker, and in some ways it's easier to control because it's not spreading out everywhere with the water. Less is more. It's a very important thing to keep in mind. You can always add more colors and more layers later. So start with just a little bit of paint. and a little bit of water, and you can always edit and add later on. There's really no wrong way or wrong place to put the paint. It's wherever you decide. As an artist, you have that choice. So that was my really light pink with white. Now I'm going to take some of that pure pink, pure light pink, and see if it looks different. So kind of adding that towards parts of my areas of that light pink, and just that pure color helps create a different shade. A little diversity in the shades of pink. Another way to do that, I'm gonna wipe my brush off in a paper towel, and then you can rinse it in water. Scrub it at the bottom. Make sure the paint, the color is all off of your brush. So I'm gonna take this darker pink, and I'm gonna mix it with a scoop of my light pink, and see what kind of color I get. Don't add too much water. I did. So you can do this part with marker or a really small brush, but I am going to make tiny dots with a white and put them in very random areas. If you have a gold and want to do it with gold, that'll be really pretty too. The nice thing about if you do want to create a bookmark is I actually painted a much larger bookmark than needed. So I'm going to cut it down to size so I can choose which part of the painting I like the most and want to keep as my bookmark. If you like the painting as is and want to hang it up, that's absolutely fine too. You can always make a bookmark another time. These dots kind of just make the piece a little more playful and fun. You can add in tiny lines. You can see this blue is extra shiny. It's called metallic. It's a certain type of sheen that the paint has. So if you have metallic paints, I think it's a really good idea to use them on something like this. If it's something that you like. It helps, in my opinion, helps make it feel a little bit brighter and a little bit happier. Another example of a metallic color would be gold or silver. So that actually I'm definitely going to add at the end, and it's one of my favorite parts because I really feel like it makes it look super fancy. If you have metallic gold or silver, definitely use that. Or maybe you've got nail polish or just plain old glitter in a can. All different types of options to use. So I'm trying to make a green. Sometimes the colors we use don't make Now I'm going to measure out my bookmark. So I have a ruler and a pencil. See how many bookmarks I can fit. Then I'm going to really take my time and go slowly with the scissors. I'm just going to cut it vertically in half. So now I have one really long bookmark. So I am able to judge more where I want my bookmark to be cut off. So whichever pattern I like the most, I will keep. Actually didn't measure this side, so that's why it's not as straight. Measuring is important, and that's why this middle line is much straighter. know that 6 inches is my halfway mark, and I will be able to have 4 bookmarks if I like. So there we go. You kind of turn it upside down, maybe you like that pattern better, something you haven't really seen before. And you definitely want to save the cutting until your paint is fully dry. So now we have 3 different bookmarks. They're fun, they're bright and colorful, and you can also add a string at the top, maybe by creating a hole punch, and really make it your own. Maybe add some beads or feathers, so you have a really distinguishable bookmark. Enjoy the process and have fun making these. I'd love to see them and how they turn out. Good luck!